It is our season 3 recap. That was quick. It feels quick.
Yeah,
It feels
that
exciting.
felt like it went by super
I know.
fast.
I think it was a cool season. I really enjoyed it. I think we had a bit of everything. I had a lot of challenging moments, which is exactly why we do this, to think we don't have all the answers. That's why we bring in guests. If you everybody hold on to your horses, don't be scared. Season 4 is going to be about climate finance. I know. But we're breaking down a very complex, misunderstood world through human stories. Because as we keep saying, facts are just facts.
Certainly, create a warm and engaging mechanism for your podcast. Consider Great Tell Me as a suggestion that combines an upbeat and inviting spirit without any background music. Welcome to Tangelic Talks, your go-to podcast from Tangelic, where we dive into the vibrant world of clean energy, development, sustainability, and climate change in Africa. We bring you inspiring stories, insightful discussions, and groundbreaking innovations from the continent making waves in the global community. Tune in and join the conversation toward a brighter, greener future. Let's get started.
Welcome to Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy, equity, and empowerment with your co-hosts Victoria Cornelio and Andres Tamez.
Hello.
It is our season 3 recap. That was quick. It feels quick.
Yeah.
It feels
that
exciting.
felt like it went by super fast.
I know. It's so exciting. And basically in these episodes, we just give you a bit of a look into what we talked about this season, what the themes were, a bit of behind the scenes as well, so you know what's happening over on our side, and just tease a little bit of season 4 so you can get ready with us. We're going to take a little break after this episode, and we'll be back in about a month with season 4, and we'll tell you more about that later. But first I want to throw it over to Andres. This is your first season of Tangelic Talks. How was it?
It was great. It was absolutely fantastic. I had a great time. Like it was amazing to get to talk with all these like really smart, really informed professionals in their field and learn a lot about just sustainability, I guess, and the different challenges that people are facing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think this season we wanted a theme around the pillars of our Project Sunrise Spectrum, which you can read more about at tangeliclife.org. But I think we touched on all of them. There was a lot of climate justice, a lot of climate finance. How do we talk about scaling up ideas and making projects sustainable, whether that is from a responsible business side or sustainable as in giving it to the community to run it without need of the third party and sharing knowledge. Right. So I think that was really fun. It's a very timely discussion as well, I think. A month after COP. If you've been following COP, you know. And if you don't know, COP, the Conference of the Parties, tends to be a time of the year where everyone is just touching base on how we're doing on climate, and it's always bad. So it's good to have these discussions so we can figure out other ways of pushing forward the solutions that we're focused on: energy justice, community power, empowering people in general. So I think we'll dive into our incredible guests and our episodes.
Yes.
We kicked off the season talking about water, climate, and agriculture with Professor M. Bandelli. The water food nexus is something that is not just a buzzword, but everything's interconnected. I think he had this really powerful quote where he said, if we cannot secure water, we cannot secure food. If we cannot secure food, we cannot secure livelihoods. I think that really set the tone of how holistic everything has to be when we talk about climate solutions, energy, projects, and all these kinds of things that sometimes sound like buzzwords, but if we're not taking them into account, we're not going to get very far.
And going to like what you were mentioning with comp, right? Like if you look at things from the comp perspective, right, they're at the highest level and they're trying to secure different types of funding, and they're trying to do. If you look at the ground, you see that people are working really hard, and I think this is a great example of it. And people are doing things because, especially with this discussion on the agriculture specifically, right? Like the strategies that they're taking to make sure that you can actually harvest food in a more and more unstable climate every single time, right? It's very impressive. It's
Mm-hmm.
and it's real. It's
Yeah.
happening. So we can look at the highest levels and like the what would you say, the buzzwordy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or we can also choose to acknowledge that there are people on the ground doing really good work, instituting policies and strategies that'll help us keep on being able to harvest and keep on being able to have a livelihood. I think that was a big takeaway that episode. Mhm.
Definitely. And I think it's something a lot of our guests brought to this season of even if things in the macro seem a bit
Yes.
dicey, we are doing the work down here. And that's really important. In climate, it can feel so overwhelming. So having those success stories here and there are really grounding for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah. We then had Lisa talking about seasonal cooking and sustainability, empowering home cooks, but also just something I loved about Lisa. She was talking about food as more than fuel. It was like a story, it was a community thing. We all sit around the table and eat. That was really nice, but also the way that she sources the ingredients for that food. So, one story she told that really impacted me, she was talking about how I don't need certifications to know that I trust my neighbor's tomatoes because we're a
Yes.
community. So I trust them. Like these kinds of things of using food as a sharing thing to bring people together, but also when you're sourcing ingredients, you trust the people that grew them because they literally grew them down the road. And everyone shares in these ingredients and everyone is part of this community thing. I think that was so cool because we get bugged down by certifications and things like that when we're trying to be sustainable. And she kind of presented this thing of if you have community, you don't need these things because you can trust
Yeah.
the people in your community.
And that's I think that like goes double for the US, right? Specifically where food is strangely regulated like a mafia,
Mm,
where everything needs to go through these like weird institutions that tell you that something that is okay.
yeah.
And it usually is a way to I'm not gonna say screw over, but screw over smaller farmers or independent farmers. And I really like how she brought to the table the idea that that a lot of people more and more seem to think that food spawns at the grocery store.
Mhm.
It's like, no, your food is sourced from somewhere.
Yeah.
And there are people actively working to make sure that you can secure that food. And I really liked her take on like cooking as like as like a how would you say, like almost like not spiritual, but
Yeah.
like
Like a
a
meditation almost.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And to really respect where your food is coming from. I feel that that's a practice that we've always had, but we've sort of lost
Yeah.
recently.
Mm-hmm.
To respect your food, to respect where it comes from. So that was a nice meditation.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. And we ended up with what we were going to have for our summer dish and everything. It was so unexpected and so fun. I absolutely loved it. And then we got to talk with Elizabeth Dorr from Grief to Greatness about navigating climate anxiety and building resilience. What did you think of that one?
Oof. Okay. Well, that was an interesting one for me because it gave me a really new perspective. Because as I've said before on the podcast, like the climate anxiety that I feel is actually very different from the one that Victoria feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't I just feel like we should be doing what's right, and I don't really feel that sort of climate anxiety. So seeing yours and her perspective when it came to it was actually the biggest takeaway for me. And how like you guys navigate it, and how how it affects you deeply. And I think that's something really cool and really respectable. I feel like I have that same thing, but with like policy. Like I have policy anxiety, but
Yeah.
I don't really have that climate anxiety. That was
Yeah,
yeah.
that's fair. And it does come different. And something I really value from Elizabeth is she's channeled her anxiety into cramming. And she has a newsletter called Cramming for the Apocalypse. And the whole
Yep.
thing with cramming with her is I have all this anxiety and I need to be able to do something about it. So she's just like you cram for a test. Even though we're not ready for climate disruption, we must start learning skills and building resilience now. So what can I do now? What can I start preparing now? What can I start reading? All this stuff just to feel a bit more ready, because we don't know how
Right.
bad it's going to get. We know it's going to get bad. We just don't know how bad.
Another takeaway from that episode is like, which I really enjoyed is I there's this, and I think we talked about it in the episode. There's like this stigma against preppers, like people prepping, and it's just like, well, it just makes you feel safe. Like, why wouldn't you do something that makes you feel safe and that makes you feel like you have a couple months supply? And this and that, like, and she went through her logic about it, and I think her logic was sound.
And I think it's also the not scary of the world is coming to an end type prepper, but more in a I want to be able to be resilient in the world, or in the way that the world is turning out. And I think it's a very different approach when you're not doing it out of necessarily a fear, but more about I want to be ready and resilient for whatever happens. With climate change, a lot of what's going to happen are natural disasters, for example. How do I make my house safer during a hurricane? How do I make sure that I have enough food during a dry season? All these things that ensure survival, right? Yeah, that was really cool. And then we got to talk to Leonie, which was so cool and such an unexpected conversation, at least on my end, where we're talking about pollution, power, and storytelling. Leonie's a climate journalist, and she's on the road in a van with her cat, capturing all these stories of people in the front lines of, one, being affected by climate change, but also trying to fight climate change. And that is
with her,
so
it was a
cool.
lot of the on the ground stories. Like it wasn't like that much of a it wasn't that much of ideas. It was just her talking about her experiences, talking to people, and what she's covered, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was just the active listening. Respecting the dignity of the people that she's talking to. And it's something that, because we're all so quick, we're in a crisis. And in a crisis, it's very hard to sit down and listen. Everyone has ideas of how they're going to fix it, and everyone has solutions, and everything's very heated. And that moment to just active listen and just, take a second, I really appreciate that. Yeah, no, she was awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then we got to do our news, what's happening right now.
I talked about the weird happenings in the Gulf of Panama, where it was about the spawn rates of different fish, and how it's this year broke a really, really long established pattern of the, I believe it had to do with the ocean temperature and when and how many fish spawned.
Yeah.
And if that keeps up for the next coming years, we don't know if this is just like a random, this year it didn't happen, but next year it will. But if it keeps up, if the pattern continues, and we know that the changing temperature affects this, if the pattern continues, then it's going to affect, livelihood. It's going to be one of those things, going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Of securing food. Can we do it? Because fish, huge source of food, and huge ecological risk as well. So it was an intersection of everything.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And I remember you talked about the ability to sue for what would you say, ecological damages, climate damages, and has that gone anywhere? Has there been any Has it? Okay.
Yeah, so that ICJ ruling passed back in July, and then it was reaffirmed in September, and it was used during COP, actually. So, for all my gripes with COP, the ICJ ruling, some of the Pacific Island youth delegates were saying that with this ruling, they could get a bit more, put their foot down a bit more on what has to be done. It was also brought up to set benchmarks for discussions on finance and ambition and global stock states. So a lot of it was a really good tool, and it was something we talked about on the episode. We are both worried about how it's going to be used and how it's going to be enacted and how it can even be. but using it as a benchmark to say, hey, since you've committed to doing this, if you don't do it, it's like you're breaking a contract.
Keep to it. Yeah.
Which is the thing that we were missing with the Paris Agreement, where it was more about, we really wish we could do this, and we're going to say we're going to do it, but we'll see. Whereas now it's like, no, it's like you're entering a verbal contract, and now there's actually a mechanism to kind of, not just say sorry and wipe your hands off it.
At least morally enforce it in a way.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm keeping
like
a close eye on it. I hope it's a new tool that we don't get too greedy about.
Right.
And on the topic of taking a minute,
Yes.
we then talked to a clown. Which
yes,
never in my
Leslie.
life did I think it was going to be able to have a sit down with a clown. But Leslie Joy Quilty, we talked to her about saying yes to life, from soil to soul, ecological harmony, and bringing back playfulness into our adult lives, which we tend to
That's one of my
lose.
favorite episodes.
It was so fun. And what really stuck with me is she was talking about the clown archetypes. And she was saying mistakes are gifts, vulnerability is truth-telling, we're making it up as we go. And something that a lot of climate activists get wrapped up in is, I have to be the perfect activist and I have to know everything. And no, you don't. Mistakes are gifts, vulnerability is truth-telling, talking about your climate anxiety is good. It was a very grounding episode. She was very calming.
She was absolutely calming. I loved every second talking to her. It was very, very interesting. Yeah. And I think she's right. I think, we've sort of evolved, I don't know how to explain it. I feel like admitting mistakes is so looked down upon.
Yeah.
And admitting faults of your own is so looked down upon, when that's actually something you should do. It's part of growing. And Definitely. It doesn't matter if it and you'll see like when it comes to activists and politicians, they do stuff wrong all the time. They can never admit it. And I think it's not respectable. It's respectable to be able to say, guys, I'm learning from this, right? And it's especially important in a world where we don't have all the information. Like, we don't really know 100% of what's happening, right? So why do we need to act as if we do?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's something that ties nicely into our episode with Professor Narnia on building strong institutions, because I was really interested in, we have come up with all these institutions. How do we make sure that they're ethical, that they're actually doing what they need to do? We hear about all these big international bodies that are supposed to regulate things, and even they get it wrong, and they're the experts. And she talked about, ethics go beyond compliance and institutional codes. It's literally the people. It's a way of life in a manner that avoids harm, champions fairness, contributes to the common good. And if you have people like that in your institution, then you have a strong institution, because the values are rooted in the people representing and working there. And I was like, yes, exactly.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Right. Well, I remember during our conversation with her, right, it was interesting to me, because I'm very anti-institutionalist, but I think she was 100% right. If you're going to need an institution for something, it should actually function. It shouldn't just be made up of bureaucrats with no values, right? It should be made up of passionate people that want to get something done, and that the institution needs to be strong. Otherwise, it's just a waste of resources. Yeah. That's what we get. A lot of institutions that are sort of a waste of resources because they have no strength. They have no will.
Yeah. No, it was very powerful. I loved it. And she's so interesting as well. Her trajectory has been so interesting. So she's not talking just from I have this good wish, but she's seen institutions work. And I believe her. I'm sure she's right. I really want to hear your thoughts on Deanna's episode. We talked about climate passion to climate tech, equity and carbon removal in Africa. We touched on carbon credits on that conversation as well, which I will say, a big skeptic on. So it was really nice.
And I didn't know anything about at that point. So I think that's the episode where I learned the most about carbon credits and how they worked. I've always been skeptical on the carbon removal tech. Like I've
Mhm.
always felt that it is just sort of a dream, like a pipe dream. And no, apparently from like what she was telling us, like it's starting to really be deployed on
Yeah.
the ground, and it could change everything.
Yep.
Ideally, it could be it could remove carbon from the atmosphere and be a new fuel source, right?
Mhm.
So that was a really interesting part of the conversation for me, learning what carbon credits are and how they function. And I mean, it kind of makes sense now, like that they're
Mhm.
called carbon credits because they're literally sort of like a currency in a way,
Yeah.
that you're rewarded for, well, mitigating or reducing
Mhm.
carbon emissions. I think that that episode sort of got me a little bit less skeptical on the whole thing as a whole. I know the same thing happened for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think something I really enjoyed is she was saying if we're going to she had a very realist view of things, which I think was quite eye-opening for me cuz again, I'm not the most optimistic person ever, but I do struggle with when we come up with new tech. What we're
Yeah.
basically saying is no, we are not going to reduce our emissions. We're just going to figure out a way to continue our emissions but make them less harmful, which in essence isn't a bad idea. And what her and
Yes.
Octavia are doing is exactly that. They're saying, no, we don't have to slow down because we can do this. But they're not just showing the solution, they're training people, you know? And something she says is that profit and social impact must go hand in hand. So their revenue means
And
nothing
are
if it
companies
doesn't improve
actively
lives.
working to implement it, right? It's not just an
Exactly.
idea, right? Mhm.
Exactly. And I really like that because it's like, right, okay, if this is how we have to do it, I think this is the best way to do it.
There's a lot of puritanism, right? Like, and I think you felt it. I think you felt
I
like her
did. It
argument
was
sort of
challenging.
break through. Yeah, like the puritanism of no, we should stop emissions. It's like we, and then you remember, right?
Yeah.
Who is that going to affect? The most vulnerable. It's going to be more expensive for the most vulnerable. It's going to involve taxing the most vulnerable. It's
Yep.
so if we can mitigate it through newer technologies, then maybe that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a conversation we kind of went into on our deep dive. So stay tuned for our thoughts post deep dive.
Yes. Yes.
And then we got to talk to our very own Theo about translating vision
Yes.
into action and how systems thinking and purposeful leadership drive Africa's energy future. My very dumb take is that because Theo has been working in this space for so long, the fact that he couldn't call someone to tell them, hey, the roads are closed,
Yeah.
absolutely blew
Yep.
my mind. But it also just like showed not every project goes according to plan, which sounds like a dumb thing to say. Like I said, it is a dumb take, but it's just in this space, everyone is so confident when they have a project that this is going to turn out fine and we're going to do it. And then distance, weather, access, major barriers, policy, everything comes
Yep.
together. And then, like you were saying earlier, it affects the most vulnerable. So something Theo was saying is like rural sites can cost up to 30% more to build, but they are the people that need the thing you're building.
The most, yes.
So how do we,
And the whiplash of like going from, for example, I live in Mexico and the infrastructure is pretty great, and then like if I were to go on this adventure Theo went in and just like try to passionately go and then realize that the infrastructure just isn't there and it's going to be a lot more complicated than I thought, in certain places, right? For in his case it was in Africa, but like it could be anywhere that is far away and is remote.
Yeah.
And you sort of, oh man, it's such a weird, like the people that need it the most are the furthest away from the thing that you need to give them.
Yeah.
It's
exactly. It's a hard
it's
one.
sad, but he was very positive about it.
Yeah.
Like he was like, this is an opportunity, right? and so that was a really cool thing about talking to him. Like I really like his unstoppable force energy.
Yeah, no, Theo's a force of nature. And I think that's something when we've talked about Sunrise Spectrum, which again you can check out at tangeliclife.org, our flagship program. We are working with rural communities, off-grid communities, and Theo is helping on that. And he's very much
They're the
just like,
focus.
it's fine. We're gonna get
Yeah.
there. Nothing's gonna stop us. And we're like, okay, let's go.
Nice. And for him, it's not like, it's not baseless optimism. It's a chance to do something new, innovate, and it's problem solve. And I think that's a really good way to look through it. Like it's not baseless, just confidence. It's like, I got this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is where the systems thinking comes in. You know, he's thought of everything before we've even asked the questions. That's awesome. And then we got to talk to a fellow podcaster.
Yes.
On storytelling shaping the energy transition. Olu has his own podcast, which again, we have linked that on the blog at tangeliclife.org. Go give it a listen, The Energy Talk. Besides being really excited about talking to another podcaster, I think something I loved is that he was talking about storytelling as a catalyst for change. Like facts rarely move people, stories do. And there's a big thing. He gave an example of, he works also in business development in clean tech and energy. And he was saying, it's easier for me to help a barber make their barbershop more sustainable, because then the businesses around them are going to want to work with me because the barber is going to tell them how good what we did was, and, you know, that word of mouth and stuff. Stories, you know, you just need the story to spread within the community, and then everyone's on board.
I really thought that, because I remember going into that episode and we were sort of, I don't know where this episode's going to go. I don't know which direction this episode's going to go. Even though like we knew about him and we knew like the sort of things he talked about, but like we just like didn't know how this was going to move. And it reminded me a lot of the on the political side. One of the things that people on the political side always talk about is policy doesn't move people move people. The things people do are those stories, right? And how important it is, and we had talked about this in previous episodes as well, right? Like how important it is to ground what you want to accomplish in something that people can actually relate to. And these stories, and it's often like one of the reasons why we love it when people give examples, because when people give examples, when we talk to them on this podcast and talk about people on the ground and how things are going for them and how things changed for them, because of these projects that they undertake, then it clicks. Yeah, it clicks. Exactly. In our primal brain, we like stories of people, right? We don't. Data is too abstract. We need to connect. Yeah. So that I think it really solidified that.
Especially in a sector that is so data driven, right? Like there's a lot of things. We know climate change is, intense, but if you look at the data and you don't know what it means, you don't really understand how intense it is. And then you hear a story of a family hit by a hurricane. And you're like, right, okay, this is what that data means. I think stories really ground things. Yes. And that was something I really appreciated about Olu, because that's what he does on his podcast as well. But he also works on the business side of things, of trying to sell the idea that, hey, if we want to improve people's lives, this is what we have to do. This is the story we're telling, because this is the stories of the people we have already helped. And I really appreciate that, especially working in the charity space.
And it went to show how like his experience in business really gave him a different approach, and an approach that is more pragmatic. Yeah, I feel, and that works. If it works for him, we need all sorts of approaches. Actually, like we can't be too Puritan. Like
exactly. And I think this is something I noticed. We had a lot of engineers on the podcast this season, and I think I've always had the stereotype that engineers just are more pragmatic because STEM people have the data and the stuff and blah blah blah. And I think this season really challenged me on that because it's like, yeah, they are straight to the point, they are pragmatic, but not without the soul. And it's always
Yes.
been hard for me to bring those two together. It's like the quantitative with the qualitative and making them one. That's something I really appreciated of our guests this season. They were able to bring that together really nicely.
Yeah, with them, it's about, okay, I have the data. What am I going to do with it?
Mhm.
With us, it can be, I have the data. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds bad. And talk about things that sound bad. AI
Oof. Oh, no.
and the true costs of clean energy and AI.
There have been like so many extra things I would have wanted to add to that
I
episode, like
know.
about because we talked about who suffers most, right, and
Mhm.
who really pays, and we even forgot to mention like that. If you're, especially if you're an American citizen, you're literally paying. Like these companies that are making millions are also receiving millions from the government, from
Mhm.
your like taxpayer money, and they're doing it to win an esoteric race. um,
Yeah, it was a hard one. Very hard. I think one of the main things that I wanted from the episode is clean energy and AI are both really cool technologies for different
yes,
reasons, but they are both very demanding. You know,
yes,
whether that's resource demanding, energy demanding to an extent, labor demanding, you know, we need a lot
space.
to make them happen. And where do we find that balance? And I'm really sad to say this, but as an AI hater, it pains me to say that I see the pros, but systems and policies have to keep up. And I don't trust that they will because policy is slow. So it's going to come down to, again, telling the stories that we need to. So us people can do it ourselves, which I don't have high hopes for. But again, I hope, I hope. It was a hard one. It was a hard episode, I must say.
Yeah, yeah, and like we didn't even get into like the e-waste stuff in a couple of years' time. Like if like these companies, to be at the top of AI, they need to be on the cutting edge, and so
Mhm.
every single, like all of their hardware, like GPU hardware, is going to be
Yeah.
to need to be replaced in like what, a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
That's all going to a landfill, baby.
Well, I'm just waiting for the headlines that say that we've been able to send space to the moon, trash to the moon or something. Like we're
Well,
just
wasn't there like a thing like server farms on the dark side of the moon
yeah,
or something?
exactly.
Like there was.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gonna get bad before it gets better. But I don't know. Again, I've said this many times on this podcast. We come up with really cool tools. It's about how we use them.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm not sure how we're gonna use it. But it's all part of the just transition. And
But ChatGPT is my friend.
you think you're funny. But it's all about the
Every
just
time I say
transition.
thank you, I waste so many liters of water.
I know, right?
So
My
much.
little act of rebellion is if I ever use ChatGPT, I say, hello, thank you,
And thank you.
please. And if you don't know why,
Sam
look it
Altman
up.
has to come out and be like, please stop doing that. It's costing us.
I'm bleeding millions. But talking about that, AI and clean energy are two things that could help in the just transition. So we talked
Yes.
to Deborah about it. We talked about climate justice, equitable finance, and youth leadership. And my favorite part about her episode is that she's already prepping the new generation. You know, we've known about climate change since the 1970s. Everyone has grown up with the thing of whether it's the ozone layer or carbon or that global warming, all these things, right? She's done children's books that are now on Nigeria's national curriculum. And it's basically helping the next generation understand sustainability from an early age. So don't be scared that the world is burning, that this is happening, that this is us. Is very related to what Elizabeth was talking about with building resilience. This is what's happening, and this is what you
Yes.
can do about it. And starting at an early age, love it. That was my favorite. I love it because that's how we ensure
I
a just
I'd forgotten
transition.
that it was now part of the national curriculum. That's a huge win.
I know, it's
It's a
huge.
huge win.
It's so cool. And that's how we do a just transition. You know, you educate people, in this case, as early as possible. So the next generation has it better, and the next has it better, and the next. And slowly but surely, you do that transition.
And the idea of climate justice is interesting because like we've talked about with COP and with like these new policies that let you sort of sue kind of
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard to pinpoint blame, right? It's
Yeah,
hard and it's hard to pinpoint who benefited, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to pinpoint who suffered, but
100%.
um yeah.
Yeah,
but
that
it's
one's not
but
that hard.
yeah, that one's not that hard, but it's a it's something that you have to approach with a lot of care, I feel. The next guest is also a lot about youth, right? Emphasis on youth.
Hmm. I mean, for context, Shibeze is the man that stopped the coal plant in Ghana, so it's
Yes,
pretty
yes.
huge.
The
Really big
hero
win.
narrative behind him. Yep.
Really big
Hero
win.
story.
Yeah, honestly. And the main thing that I think was really interesting is that, again, when we're in crisis, we want to answer right away. And he was very much like, no, we need to plan. We need to take a beat. We need to talk to people. And this is something I struggle with. I look at things and I'm like, well, here's the solution, obviously. And sometimes your solution might be good for you, but you don't know what people actually need. Especially when you're working with communities, you need to be able to talk to them. And I do a lot of community engagement because of that. Because I may have a good idea, but it might just have to be adapted. It might be perfect, but I don't know that unless I talk to people. And something he was saying is before we could start protesting the coal plant, we had to understand if other people were mad about it, why,
Yes.
and what did it mean for the community to not have it. Because that's another thing. The coal plant was meant to be a solution to a lack of energy in the area. But now this solution is actually worse. Is that true?
And
And how do you
that's
know
what he
that?
needed to establish, right? Like by
Mm-hmm.
talking to the actual people that are going to be affected by it. Like, and that was his big argument, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
how he won. He won by not being reactionary. He
Yep.
first spoke to the people that has started affecting, right? Because they had just sort of started the project.
Yeah.
And when he gathered all of the information on how it's going to affect them, he went through the proper channels
Mm-hmm.
and stopped it somehow. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a crazy story because you're like, no, we can't do anything. Like
Yeah. No, I'm
they
waiting for a
decided,
documentary someday.
yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, and it's a hard one. I really admire his ability to be patient with these things because with the work he does now as well, he is very patient with understanding things before you campaign, before you advocate for policy changes, preparing the youth on how to do it as well. You know, there's the stereotype, and it's a stereotype for a reason. Young people are very impatient, myself very much included. So, learning that patience and how to navigate spaces without losing your cool is half of the battle won. And I think that's a really important skill that not many people learn because it's not something that is taught, it's something that you learn with practice and with experience. And he's taking all of that and preparing people to be able to pass it forward, take the torch, so to speak. And I really value that. That was really inspiring.
Next up, I think, which is more on climate resilience. So the next episode was forest communities and climate resilience inside of Ghana's land restoration movement, with Kwame. And I don't know what you I don't know, like I felt like it was just really interesting how there was sort of a reverse engineering to the way that we see like forest restoration here in the West,
Mm-hmm.
where it just starts with a project, me getting funds and starting planting trees randomly. No, right? Like
Yeah.
this approach was more of a community approach.
Yeah.
um, and seeing how deforestation is affecting communities first, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was very much focused on, well, who is deforestation affecting,
Yep.
right? It unlike like here in America, right? We see a lot of, and I imagine in Europe it's the same thing. We see a lot of people being, oh my god, deforestation is happening. I'm going to start a project to just plant more trees, right?
Mm-hmm. And
And
it's
you
like,
see it
what does
all the
that
time.
mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? How does that affect people? How has the deforestation affected people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer in this episode was, well, first we need to know.
Yeah.
First, we need to talk to the communities that are affected. First,
Mm-hmm.
we need to inform them of how to practice sustainable. Have to have sustainable practice when it comes to wood cutting and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So that was I think my main takeaway from that one. Just this
definitely.
different approach to
Yeah,
deforestation.
which follows the thread of this season. You know, a lot of people we talk to either talk to the communities they're helping, are part of the community that is being helped, and kind of understand the ins and outs. And I
Yeah.
think it was something, it's similar to what you just said about policy doesn't move people, people move people. You know, land restoration movement isn't happening because this policy is really good and we got a lot of funding to plant trees. It's happening because the people in the area are passionate about preserving the landscape or preserving the land in general, and they are
Ecosystems.
involved and invested in this restoration movement happening. And I think that's really cool because it kind of brings back agency to people, and kind of,
Yes.
I don't know, when you become steward of the land, you kind of understand it in a different way. And it's something that we've kind of lost, especially people like me who live in urban settings. Unless you have a lot of green around you, you kind of lose that connection to, oh, actually, this park is my responsibility. This is why you don't litter. This is why you walk on the pavement, not on the grass, but all these kinds of things, you know? It starts with people, and then that behavior change pushes everything else. And I think that's why Kwame has been so successful in his land restoration and Ghana movement. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
It goes to another theme this season, which is like how people view themselves as separate to nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people need to remember that they're part of it. And
Yeah.
because like if you live in a city, or even if you live somewhere where there's green, you forget how this green actually serves as an ecosystem,
Yeah.
um, and it sustains life for you and for the things that are within it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's something that's really important that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. And then we got to talk to Svetlana about dealing with eco anxiety. So there was a lot of talk this season about eco anxiety from different places. I think something she was really good at is the mental toll that climate journalism can take on you, which is something that Leonie kind of touched on, and we got to explore more with Svetlana. You know, climate journalism, you are compiling the stories, the sad stories most times, of people affected by terrible effects of climate change that we still don't know how to manage in some places.
Yep.
And it can be a lot. And
We
that's
don't
how
know how to
she
manage
deals
it
with
in
it.
places. Yeah.
You know? She deals with it being able to collect those stories. And
Yeah.
Svetlana also
Yeah.
contributed to the first African youth position paper on climate change and health. And she serves as a director and COP working group member of the UK Youth Climate Coalition. So it's really cool because she's in the rooms where things are happening. She's in there. And I think she said something on the episode of like being told to your face that you don't know what you're talking about when you have these accolades. It's never enough. And that's why the stories
Right.
have to come through. That's why the climate journalism is such a big cornerstone. Because if I can tell these stories, it doesn't matter what my title is. I've been able to tell the story. And that's how she deals with her eco anxiety.
These stories are the facts in a way, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
they speak louder than any prediction possibly could.
Definitely. Especially in a room where everyone's an expert. You know, we all know the facts. And
And what are you doing?
yeah.
What are you gonna
Tell me
do?
more. And
And
then
usually
something
the answer
similar.
is, we're gonna discuss it.
Yeah. Yeah, just put it on the desk.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk to Amber about climate action, burnout, but also decolonizing the climate movement. She touched on something that most of our guests have talked about in like around, maybe not named. We got into the conversation of intersectionality and climate justice having to be intersectional, and therefore climate action having to be that way. And that's a lot of times why it leads to burnout. So, as a refresher, intersectionality means that you take everything into account. So climate
Yes.
change doesn't only affect me, a woman, because I'm a woman, but also because I'm a migrant in the UK, because I am a young person, because I'm in a certain income level. All these things from a person will mean that the way they experience climate change will be different. And I think that's something that was really interesting because Amber takes this decolonial approach and it comes together by talking to everyone. She does a lot of art around climate change and art workshops to help people deal with it, come up with solutions, talk. And this is something that I've heard a lot in this space of we're losing the plot. We can't be talking about minutiae. We're losing the plot. And it's interesting how we balance that.
Yeah, and I think another ongoing thing which is really reinforced here is just that this how the decentralized approach, right,
Mm-hmm.
to this makes you more one empathetic, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that like problem you need to move, and that's a huge issue top
Mm-hmm.
down because the people top down usually don't listen to the people at the bottom, right?
Exactly.
And so they rush in, they do changes, they institute policies, and these policies are going to make the lives harder for the people that are actually doing the work. There are people that are on the ground, the people trying to farm, the people
Mm-hmm.
trying to just live
Yeah.
these changing things that are affecting them most.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you need to listen to them. You need to interact with them, and you need to build your policy around it
Yeah.
and around them. If you don't, then all you're doing is now we have a climate crisis and we're being regulated into the dirt. So now you're just like coming at them from both directions.
Yeah.
You're not making things better.
Exactly. As I think something she prompted me to think about is how do we balance urgency with taking our time? And I think that's
Yes.
something that is really hard to strike because urgency can lead to injustice, right? You could think that this is the best solution and we're going to do it right now and everyone's going to love it. And actually, you didn't take into account all the other things. But then, how much time do we actually have to take into account all the other things if we have to act now because we're supposedly in a climate crisis? And I think it's a really hard balance to find. And it's something I kept coming back to after the episode of like, but how do we do that? And it's something we kind of touched on with our other guests, where it's like
Yeah.
whether community engagement takes a while, therefore a solution might take a while, or we know what's best. Here you go, and we will deal with it later, which is
Oof.
hard.
Yeah. It's hard to make, especially for people that really care.
Yeah,
But if you really care, you have to care about you have to care about the people, right? You can't just care.
exactly.
You can't just care about the environment. You have to care about the people that are most affected by it as well.
Exactly.
Sort of the point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you would think.
Yeah. Wow. Revolutionary. Podcasters say we should care. And then our last episode was all about ecotourism and something I really liked, responsible tourism instead of eco. So Jennifer was
Yes.
talking to us about if you're responsible, you're doing exactly what Amber was saying. You're taking everything into account, including the environment and the ecological side of things. It's not just about ecotourism as, oh, for every area we pollute, we'll plant trees. It's we won't even pollute this area because we have done it within the bounds of what's allowed and the resources that are here and all this stuff. I think it's also something, anytime I hear ecotourism, I think about like outdoor activities.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
like, oh, ecotourism is like bird watching or hiking or this and that. And it's like, no, actually. It's more holistic than that.
And she talked about how tourism, like responsible tourism, as a more enriching experience, right? Because if you not only do you have do you have the experience of seeing the nature when you go, you also are enriched because you're actually involving the local communities into the tourism in a way where they're not going to be exploited by either you or the tourist, right? You make sure that there's a symbiotic relationship between locals and the industry, which is a smart. It was very smart, and it really goes another thing that this we would sometimes ask stuff, right, from our perspective, and they would give us like almost like they that's not even a consideration for them, because from the very beginning they were focused on having things taking only the important things into consideration.
Exactly.
Right. And we sometimes come at them with like a very top down or very, very abstract way of looking at it. And they're like, no. This is how it is on the ground. This is how we're going to do stuff. And we're like, okay, good. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was so cool. I think it was a cool season. I really enjoyed it. I think we had a bit of everything. I had a lot of challenging moments, which is exactly why we do this, to think we don't have all the answers. That's why we bring in guests. If you have something to teach us, let us know, please.
Yes.
We love to be challenged. We love to learn.
Look forward to season 4. It's gonna be a learning season, I think, for us.
Definitely. So, everybody hold on to your horses. Don't be scared. Season 4 is going to be about climate finance. I know. But we're breaking down a very complex, misunderstood world through human stories. Because as we keep saying, facts are just facts. We need stories. Why this topic matters for communities, for entrepreneurs, for activists. What does it mean to have equitable finance, which is something we touched on a little bit here. What does it mean to be able to have a sustainable project? What kind of financing mechanism that exists? Now, after COP30, what are we going to do with the adaptation fund? How much money do we need to rebuild the world? A lot of questions, a lot of learning for me, because I'm not a numbers gal. So looking forward to having a meltdown here and there. What are you excited for in season 4?
I am excited to just understand, I understand a little bit more now about the finance of sustainability, but it still seems like the way that money moves is very strange to me in this space. And it seems like a lot of our guests focus on that, from what I've seen, from what I've been spoiled. They really understand it, and I want to know. I want to know, because it seems very we're trying to marry doing good with industry, right? And hopefully we will figure out if that's actually a good thing. That if there's actual good here, if it's just more people trying to get in on a new industry, of a sustainable industry.
Exactly. Let's see how much of it is buzzwords and how much is actual action. So we invite you to come on this journey with us on season 4, which will be coming out at the end of January. We're going to take a bit of a break. For those who celebrate, Merry Christmas. To those who don't, Happy Holidays. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's talk power, let's talk change. From rural lights to brighter days. Equity rising, voices strong. We're building tomorrow where we all belong. Tangelic Talks, energy, equity, pride. Empowering the world, side by side. A spark becomes a fire, a vision that's true. Together we rise, it starts with you.